I wasn't the school bully, but the bigger guys made it a matter of cautious principle to lay off me after one or two goings. This is by no means boastful, just a matter of fact. I could handle the biggest boys in school, boys who were 2 or 3 years older than myself, even those Australian boys. And that is saying something, because Australians are very tough. I fought dirty, without the English sense of fair play. If I got into a quarrel, I was out to win, not negotiate. Yet, I was always defensive. I don't remember ever picking a fight, but I remember resenting the big boys, the bullies. I always walked way around them. I didn't want any trouble with them because they were bigger and older. But I said to myself, if one of these fellows picks on me, he will know this has been it, because I will never quit. I may be new here, but I will take no bull from anyone. That's about how I've been all my life. There were certain Australian verses which keynoted me. I got my scrapping tone from a quantram that ran like this: I can strike a line through scrub or pine, or play a hand of poker, or ride a hack or hump a black, with any other joker. I got my knuckles hard just thinking of an Aussie folk line such as, for scrapping is my special gift, my chiefest sole delight. Just ask a wild duck, can it swim? A wild cat, can it fight? The cock of the walk at school was a very tough fellow named Lindsay, very big, and a year or two older than me. I was frankly afraid of him. He had several bad habits, such as dunking your toothbrush in the chamber pot you had under your bed. When we played at the school games, he was usually a little better than me. The boys always feared him. He pushed them, and they stayed pushed. He wasn't vicious, just a big boy who tossed his weight around. Elise had her eyes on a few boys in the school. Lindsay, myself, perhaps one or two others. She liked it that there was a bit of competition amongst us to try to make time with her. Lindsay, jealous that I had a couple of sessions with Elise behind the hedge, squealed to the school heads. He told them how I got out at night through a certain window. Lindsay was prefect of the dormitories. A straw boss job given to him because he could make the fellows do as he wished. He went to Mr. Wentworth, the housemaster, and suggested that a stop be put to my nightly exits. They put a sheet of corrugated iron on the ground at the point where I usually landed. One night, when I made the leap, it sounded like bells clanging when I hit. Mr. Wentworth was at a nearby window. He shot the window up and told me to report to the headmaster the following day. I caught hell. Lindsay was after Elise. So was I. He had put the screws on to my nightly escapades. I wanted no trouble with him, but I could feel it coming. It got around the school that there was bad feeling between the two biggest boys in Sydney North Shore Grammar. I said to myself, if I get into a fight with you, boy, you'll know you've been in one. I'll give you the dirtiest going over I can think of. By now, I felt that Lindsay had about pushed me into a corner, and I had to fight him. Sure enough, we met not far from the school, by the Parramatta River. He taunted me. He circled around, tongue-lashing, goading me to take him on. We started with routine slugging. Soon we had wrestling grips on each other. The fight became tumble-tumble, and now I headed him for the water. That was my best chance. He was too strong. I knew the water. I had to get him underwater. He was much bigger, much heavier than me, and he fought smilingly. He fought smilingly, with the certainty of his own unconquerable nature. This was disturbing to me. I had to fight now with my anger, work my anger up good so that I would get dirtier and dirtier and stop at nothing. We were in the water, and he thought he had the best of me because he was on top of me. I moved like a shark beneath him, deliberately turning on my back. I got him by the throat, and down he came below water. I knew nothing about wrestling, but in the water, I moved instinctively. I stuck my legs underneath his arms. He had big ears, and I grabbed onto his ears. I let the breath out of my body. If I could hold my breath long enough and keep him under water while I held, sure enough, the hold I had on him prevented him from reaching my balls. In a dirty fight between men, that is the way to clinch it. With the breath out of my body, I tried to sink, so as to fight underwater. This went on, he trying to get loose, and I hanging on like a leech, using my water talents in a fight with a land fighter. By now, we were far out in deep water, not many people around. We were simply and clearly trying to kill one another by any means it could be done. Each time I came up for air, I inhaled deeply. Lindsay didn't know how to breathe in water. He was getting filled up with it. Suddenly, I was on top of him. I had him by the throat. I held his head under water. When I felt I had him, a boat came by. The people in it screamed at us to stop the murderous fight. It must have looked strange to them, with both of us underwater most of the time, just my head bobbing up for a quick breath of air. By the time we got to the bank of the river, I had my breath back. Lindsay lay on the edge like a gasping blowfish. The people who brought us in cried out that he was dead. I was completely exhausted, terrified. My God, had I killed him? The people were excited, calling for someone who knew something about life-saving. I knew little of it, but I put my knees right in the middle of Lindsay's back and gave him some makeshift artificial respiration to the best of my ability. Water spouted out of his mouth as from a freshly opened fire hydrant. Every time I pushed my knee into his back, the water gushed from him. Pretty soon, one of the masters from the school arrived and turned him over. Lindsay was breathing again. I was totally exhausted. I couldn't stand. After that, Lindsay was no threat. The way I fought Lindsay is about how I have had to battle most of the days of my life. I swore then, and even before Lindsay, I might get beaten up in life, but the Joker will know he's been in a fight. Neither of us was reprimanded for the fight. In Australia, they let you fight it out. A week or two later, the headmaster called me into his office. I stared at the cold, official face of Mr. Robson. Here it goes again. It was like being in the dock just before the sentence. Your father is in England? Yes, sir. He's a very distinguished man. Yes, sir. I know, sir. You show little prospect of emulating him. I was silent. Your mother, she is also in England? No, she's in France, sir. Too bad. Nothing but trouble. I don't know what you need, young man, but whatever it is, this school has not got it. You're expelled, Flynn, for being a disturbing influence on the rest of the scholars. I walked out. Over me a cold fright. I headed into the business district of Sydney, knowing what I must do. I couldn't tell Father about this. I had now to prove my worth to him. Get work, I said to myself, any kind of work. I was alone in Australia, not yet 17, but from this instant, totally on my own. Sir Edward Gibbon, the owner of a wool-dealing firm, was a friend of my father's. I told him I was through with school. Sure thing, lad. I'm happy that Professor Flynn sent you to me. Of course, the professor hadn't, but soon I was behind a counter. My job was to lick stamps and put them on letters. Another lad named Thompson, 5 years older than I, worked at the same counter and did the same labor. Near us was a little box labeled Petty Cash. We took turns watching it. It wasn't too petty for me, and it wasn't too petty for Thompson. We discovered that we both shared a passion for the Horsescat Randwick. We discovered that we both shared a passion for the Horsescat Randwick racecourse, which I used to head for whenever I got a Saturday off from school. My mother, when she was in Sydney, was also fond of that place. There she betted, flirted, and brought home the news of the winners. Thompson and I tinkled with the petty cash box, and we were off to the races. Our idea was the old simple one. We'd win and put the money back, naturally. The company fired both of us. I got off easy. It should have been a stretch for us, but because of Dad, Sir Edward's heart of lead melted. There's no moral to this, except, of course, don't get caught. Jobs were scarce. Father far, far away, and didn't dare write him. And I didn't dare write him. Mother was rarely in my thoughts. Where to go? Which way to turn? Thompson and I, commiserating, hanging out together, managed to find work folding political pamphlets and distributing them for the Labor Party. The pamphlets were couched in terms of mild invective against the government. I suppose it was an early form of communist activity, because we worked in an underground cellar. We got a feeling we were on the right side, part of a cause. After a week, the job was ended. Thompson was a tough Australian handicapper, ready to do anything for a little reason whatever, with never a shilling in his pocket. He had sandy brown hair, and it stood up like big bristles on his head. The first fellow I ever knew to have a crew cut, long before its popularity in the States. For a week we hung about together, both at odds end, where to go, what to do. Everything I had done so far had ended in swift failure. All was gloomy. How did you survive in this world? Look, Flynn, said Thompson, I know some guys who've got it made. Who? You want to meet him? Sure. He took me around to meet the members of the Razor Gang, a crowd that got into the Sydney papers from time to time. They were elusive, and the police couldn't locate them. They did their work, and they were quick. A slash across the face, grab the loot, and beat it. There was a strip in Sydney at that time. I don't know if it still exists. We went between King's Cross and Darlinghurst, a rugged district that was called the Dirty Half Mile. From each side of the Dirty Half Mile, dark alleys sprouted. These young hoodlums, sometimes called the Wooloo Mooloo Gang, hung out in this region. If they caught somebody going through this area way, they had absolutely no mercy. Come across, digger, or take this. This was their mugging instrument, a cork, halfway through which was embedded a razor blade. The cork held the blade staunchly, and you didn't get your hand cut. If the prospective victim was stupid enough not to give up his money, slash slash in the form of an X mark went the razor across the face, obliquely down one way, obliquely down the other. The idea was to make a cross on the face, laying it open. A man either came across or was left with plenty of air to breathe. Thompson ran afoul of the Razor Gang in the very week he and I hung out with these fellows. It was sure as hell death with these boys if you mickeyed, Australian for squealed. There was some such suspicion of Thompson having done something irregular. After that, his head wasn't worth the neck it stood on. At the end of this week of banditry, Johnson was picked up in a gutter, with all of his throat showing and both cheeks cut wide open. He lost too much blood and never came out of it. That was enough for me. These boys played too rough. Besides, I was never paid my share of the loot, probably because I was unethical enough not to wield a razor. I took refuge in Sydney Domain, a big park overlooking Sydney Harbor. I had no place to go, no money, nothing, and now I got my first introduction to really roughing it in a big city. The park was closed at night, as I have found public parks to be all over the world, but there were always hobos, tramps, or as they call them in Australia, swagmen or sundowners around. I found a cave that was inhabited by 3 or 4 of these bums. We could crouch for warmth by a meager fire. They taught me how, on a cold night, to wrap a newspaper inside your pants to keep warm. The Sydney Sun and the Sydney Herald stood us in mighty good use for 3 or 4 days. Lousy reading, but warm. They kept out the wind, and sometimes, before stuffing them inside my clothes, I read them. I read of the big gold strike in New Guinea. Gold! Just what I needed. New Guinea's for you, sport, I told myself. New Guinea, the vast unknown land to the north. My latest expulsion from school didn't set right with Naomi, nor with her family. She didn't like my manner of life, nor did I. Where was I? Where was I all the time? What kind of company did I keep? What was going to happen to me? We fought in a room of her house, tempers rising. In the high tradition, she took off her engagement ring and flung it at me. Good, just what I needed. It missed and went underneath the piano. Till then, I never knew I had lizard blood in me. There was about 4 inches of crawling space beneath that fixture, but I was lean and angry. I stretched under and grabbed the ring. I made a dramatic exit with the right farewells and the right resolves. I'd go out and make my fortunes, and she'd see, by God, she'd see. At once, I set out to sell back the ring. I needed the money now for one simple thing: escape. I sold it for about half the money necessary for the fare to New Guinea. The fare was £18. I needed a few more pounds, and I went to my Uncle Oscar and told him I had to get out, fast. He may have been delighted to hear that I wanted to go to New Guinea, for he gave me the necessary few pounds to take leave. It was early 1926. I was just 17. From then on, I began the wanderings that have never ceased.